Welcome back to another Mando Lessons Live. Saturdays at noon is when these happen, when I can do them. It's been a little bit of time because I was main fiddle camp for the last couple weeks. But I'm excited to be back at it. My summer schedule is getting less busy as we speak, and hopefully we'll be able to do these more regularly. I hope everything is coming through loud and clear, and alright, got all kinds of chats already. We got folks from Indiana, the Dutchlands, Alabama, Tel Aviv, Oregon, Minnesota. Howdy doody. Good to see you, the Pelican. Griffin, Georgia, Canada, California, all kinds of places. That's great. London. Awesome. Alright, I'll make sure I didn't miss anything important already in the chat here. Cool. On Bourbon Street says they just got a mandolin and love it even more than the 12-string guitar. Yeah, they are super fun. 12-string guitars are fun too. I don't have one of those, but maybe someday. Alright. Good very early morning from China. Awesome. Thanks for joining. That first tune that I played right there is a great Quebec tune, a tune from Quebec called Louis Cyr, Louiscyr, who was a legendary strongman, I think from like the 1800s. Really great tune. I don't know who wrote it or how traditional it is. I'm pretty sure it's traditional, but having a name Louis Cyr, now that I think about it, might not be. Hopefully the YouTube folks don't jump on me for that one. I have my doubts. But in any case, if you haven't been here before, welcome. It looks like we got over 30 people watching, which is great. The way these work is it's a great time to ask questions. I love hearing what people are working on, what questions they have when it comes to playing music or mandolin. I mostly play traditional music. I'm happy to take requests. I don't do anything that might have copyright restrictions. Recently composed stuff or pop song covers, as much as I'd love to. I don't really know that music that well, and also the YouTube algorithm will find that I'm doing these covers, and they'll put ads on the videos and make it all give me copyright strikes and get my channel taken down. So I'm going to avoid that stuff. But I love taking requests, and I'll do them if I can. Looks like we got all kinds of questions rolling in already, so I'm going to jump right into it. Recovering bassist says he's had a big breakthrough and is the best mandolin player in the house now. Also the only one. Well, in that case, keep up the good work. Glad to hear it. Chip says, question, have you ever had hand issues? I certainly have, yeah. With any sort of repetitive motion, whether it's typing on a keyboard, playing an instrument, you're asking your hands to do all kinds of stuff. I've had a number of things. I've kind of had like sore left hand stuff in the past. Kind of the biggest thing I had for a while was actually in my right hand. Had kind of some nerve problems that were popping up down here. I kind of was getting tingling sensations and numbness in these two fingers. My elbow would feel weird. My arm was kind of buzzy. And I went to a bunch of various doctors trying to see what was going on, and ultimately ended up we had a great kind of sports and medical massage and physical therapy guy who lives near me, and he ultimately got kind of traced it back into my back. And when I play for a long time, I would really hunch over and kind of tighten everything up. And once you're tight up here, and all your muscles kind of go through these various little holes to get out to the end of your fingers, it can cause all kinds of problems. So really, I was just getting kind of referred problems into my fingers from my back. So I did a lot of back stretches, strengthening exercises, and I've been mostly good since. I should do more stretching than I do, but I'm mostly on top of it at this point. I'd always kind of get to the end of the busy summer season and realize I need to be doing more stretching and exercise than I do. But so far, knock on wood, I haven't had problems in a while. But yeah, I talk a lot about technique, and that's part of why is really it can save you from a lot of pain and discomfort down the line. And I'm always kind of revamping my own technique and trying to make it better and make myself more comfortable. And in the process, I think it kind of improves tone and just the general musicality of the stuff that's coming out of your fingers and out of your instrument. Great question, though. I hope you're not, hope people out there aren't suffering too much on the hand issues front. It does pop up, whatever you do, just try to stay relaxed. If you're really having kind of recurring problems, go see somebody, whether it's a physical therapist or primary care, or find a massage. I found that really a lot of massage therapists really have a good, keen sense of kind of where stuff is originating. Kind of thinking about my fingers were the problem, but really having someone be like, well, actually it's starting in your back. And at first I was like, really? That doesn't seem like it makes a whole lot of sense, but sure enough, that's what was going on. Let me make sure I'm on top of things here. This is great. Got awesome questions already. Chip says left hand fingertip. Maybe that's where you're kind of feeling some discomfort. Sorry to hear it if that's the case. But do you do any warm-ups? I think yes. I do. I go kind of off and on with doing warm-up stuff. I was a little scattered this morning, so I noticed that as I jumped right into that fast tune, I was really starting to feel it. And because I hadn't done any warm-up, I was setting up a new camera and getting everything back in order after 2 weeks away, cleaning up the house, and jumped into that tune. I was like, whoa, okay. Should have done a little warming up. But, yeah, there's some great left-hand warm-up exercises. What I really like, kind of dual function, is working on the FFCP exercises from jazzmando.com. I've talked about them in the past. There's some references over on my website. Great four-finger closed position scales. That sort of thing. And that will simultaneously get your left hand moving, get a lot of pinky exercise going. You really only need to do maybe 60 seconds of that stuff, and then take a break, because it is kind of left hand intensive, but it really warms you up quick, and it gets you working in some new keys as an added bonus. Cool. Recovering bassist said Louis Cyr had a song. Yeah, he's got a fiddle tune. Juice says, stopped playing because of work, but went and saw Flogging Molly last night, and I'm back in the game now. Awesome. That's great. I haven't kept up with them much. I've heard them kind of on and off throughout the years, but glad they reinvigorated your enthusiasm. That's a great reason to go see live music in and of itself, as it really gets the creative juices flowing, and really inspiring stuff. I always come out of concerts getting really inspired to go home and work on some music myself. Recovering bassist says, my big problem is tensing up using the pick. I can feel myself doing it, especially when having to change strings, like picking a faster fiddle tune. Yeah, that's totally common. I think, the fact that you're saying you can feel yourself doing it is a huge win on your end, because you know that you're doing it, you can feel it. What I would recommend is check out some of the right hand exercises in the technique and fundamental section of my website. Even revisit them if you've already watched them all. Try to stay nice and loose, and kind of develop your ability to just kind of pause after playing for a little while, kind of reset your shoulders and arm and pick, and get nice and loose. Shake out your hands if you need to. Just take a 5-second break every couple minutes and reset back to a nice comfort level. And then you'll feel yourself tense up again. That's kind of the natural progression, but as long as you keep kind of reminding yourself to stay nice and relaxed, it'll lead towards a more relaxed playing style in the long run. Josh has a great question. Not sure if you have this lesson on your website, but if not, could you give a quick example of how to modulate from one key to another? Yeah, I should do a lesson on that. That's a great idea. I think there's actually a couple there's a couple fiddle tunes that I teach in different keys, because they're played commonly in more than one key. So, for example, I'll do Sail Away Ladies in the key of G and then the key of A. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's an example of modulation going from one key to another, often within using a similar melody, things like that. I think one of the hardest parts for me anyway is just getting those first couple notes. So, kind of taking it back, taking it out of time and saying, okay, this is in the key of G, and I'm starting on a G note. It's going G, 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 D, E. So I know that in the key of A, I'm going to start on that same relationship of notes. So if I'm in G, starting on a G, and I'm in A, I'm going to start on an A. And instead of going G, 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 D, E, I'm going to go A, E, F sharp. And you can either think about that in terms of like the scale, or you can think about it in terms of numbers. So you're starting on the root, and then going down to the fifth, and then up to the sixth note of the scale. But once you get those couple notes, then you can really start relying on your ear and your familiarity with particular scales. So if you've worked a little bit on scales, or even just worked on a couple tunes in the key of A, you're going to have an easier time really getting things to flow out of your fingers in different keys. So you get and at that point, I'm sort of like, my brain is recalibrated a little bit, and I can sort of now start finding the notes, because our ears already know the melody, regardless of what key it's in. You could sing it in whatever key you want, whatever key fits your voice, and it might not be G or A. And our ear knows those kind of note relationships, and if you're comfortable with those note relationships in various keys connected through your left-hand fingering, then you can really kind of translate whatever melody you have in your head out through muscle memory and knowledge of keys. Again, not necessarily through practicing scales, but maybe just like knowing some tunes in a key. Then you can you'll be better at improvising in a way that tune in the given key you're trying to get to. Hope that's helpful. Great question. And I should do a lesson on that. It's a great idea. My chat just jumped. Joy Dip from India says, left hand, any exercises for your left hand, please? Yeah. What I would recommend is go to my website, MandoLessons.com. There's a technique and fundamentals section. There's tons of left hand exercises. Like I was talking about earlier, the FFCP PDFs from jazzmando.com. There's links over in the left hand technique section of my website. A lot of great stuff for kind of getting your left hand moving, optimizing it so you don't have really flying fingers. You're nice and compact in your left hand, and you're not doing a lot of extraneous movements. All that stuff is on my website, free to watch at any time. Anthony says, how does one develop speed on tunes without sacrificing accuracy? Relaxation is key, as you are now talking about. Yeah, totally. Relaxation is big in terms of getting a tune down. I would also say a balance of playing the tune really slow and making sure you have the tune down really solid. Pick direction is usually one of the limiting factors. If your pick direction is a little bit off in your right hand, it's going to feel a little unnatural, and it's going to hold your speed back. Whereas if you can really get your right hand patterns, there's only two, one for reels, one for jigs. If you can get those right hand patterns down, again, links in the technique and fundamental section of my website, under right hand exercises. If you can get those patterns down, it'll really help your speed and your relaxation, because you won't have to be thinking about individual pick strokes. You can just sort of get these feelings into your right hand and then sort of zone your right hand out once you're nice and relaxed. And once you have practiced it through a couple tunes, and it'll start to become more and more familiar and more muscle memory related, rather than thinking, is this a downstroke or an upstroke, or what should I be doing here? You just get a natural sense of what should be going on. So yeah, check out that. There's lessons on my website on how to play faster, where I go through a lot of that stuff. Check it out. Lewis says, for working on scales, the A part of Blackberry Blossom and the Rights of Man are sure doing the job for me. Yeah, that's the great thing about tunes, you know? If you're interested in playing fiddle tunes, there's so much of them are really just based on scales. It's little bits of scales and arpeggios, which are another great thing to learn. Arpeggios are sort of a chord broken up into intervals. That sort of sound is an arpeggio. And you can really take tunes. You take a tune like Real Saint Antoine, a great tune from Quebec, and it's really just a combination, and a lot of tunes are combinations of arpeggios and scales. So you have arpeggio, and then scale, up, arpeggio, scale, scale pattern, arpeggio, scale, arpeggio, scale, arpeggio, scale, scale pattern. And you can really, if you start, realizing like, oh, this is just a part of a scale in this tune, really that's, for me, a much more musical and a much more fun way to practice scales, rather than sitting there and going, which has value in its own right, but I think, that's not as fun for me as playing a nice melodic fiddle tune. And you can really, at least for myself, I have a lot more fun playing fiddle tunes than practicing scales. And I do whatever, one of my main practice guiding forces is, if it's fun, I'm going to play more and have a better time and be more likely to pick up the instrument. So I really try to focus on what I'm having fun with at any given time. Lots of great questions. But yeah, also Blackberry Blossom, it's a great... It's a great collection of kind of scale patterns and arpeggios. Same thing with Rights of Man. Recovering Bassist says, I'm always having trouble with the strap falling off the back peg when I'm sitting or moving. Oh, so do you have like a strap button on like somewhere on like the back or the neck of the instrument? What you could try, if you have an instrument like this, I just have this piece of, it's probably kind of hard to see, but I have this shoelace going through the strap, and then underneath the fingerboard. It only works if you have a raised fingerboard. What you could also try is tying it around the headstock, which is what I do on like my old Gibson mandolin up there that doesn't have a raised fingerboard. I just tie it underneath the strings above the nut. I hope that's helpful, and I hope you can figure out how to keep your strap attached to your mandolin, because that is a important thing. Linda says, do you play the gravel walk, and will you be making a lesson of it? Good question. The first answer is I do play the gravel walk. I can never remember how it goes. It's one of the tunes that I just kind of tend to follow in Irish sessions, but I'm planning on making a lesson of it. I think it's fairly high up the list. It'll probably come out in a couple months or so, but never quite know what's going to be coming out until I already do it. But that's a great tune, very popular tune, and I should definitely make a lesson of it, and it's definitely on the list. And I should learn how to start it, because that's one of those tunes that it's a good one. All right, let's see. This is great. So many good questions. Over 40 people watching. Thanks everybody for joining in. James says, "Can I make a request for Turkey in the Straw?" Absolutely. I don't remember if I have a lesson for it on the website, but I'll play it right now. It's a great tune. Great tune, Turkey in the Straw. Love that tune. And there is a lesson on my website. Thank you to Oliver for typing in that it is on my website, because I can never remember what's there. Oliver also has a question. Do you have any tips for someone who is just starting to try and improvise bluegrass breaks? Definitely. I would check out the songs section of my website, where I go through taking a song, learning the chords, learning how to sing the melody, learning how to play the melody, learning how to embellish the melody and create solos a little bit. Going through that process on a number of songs is a really helpful thing to do. I think in terms of learning to improvise breaks in bluegrass, also listening is big. Listen to a lot of bluegrass mandolin players. Listen to what they're doing, and even if it's just passive listening, where you're not really what's the word I'm looking for here? I can't think of the word I'm looking for. But if you're listening to music and you're listening to mandolin players, even if you're just kind of passively listening and saying, "Oh, that sounds nice," and you're not saying, "Oh, what key are they in? What notes are they playing?" Things like that. That sound will get in your head, and it will. The more you listen, the more naturally it will come out of your fingers. I also think in terms of playing breaks, starting with a melody is huge. So if you're playing 9-pound hammer, this 9-pound hammer, it's a little too heavy for my side. For my side, roll on, buddy. Won't you roll so slow? How can I roll when the wheels don't go? Start with the melody. This 9-pound hammer, it's a little too heavy for my side. For my side, roll on, buddy. Let it all go. How can I roll when the wheels don't go? Starting with the basic melody, working on getting your right hand moving, adding in some double stops like that, I think is going to be a more fulfilling sounding solo than just going, "When the wheels won't go." That's fun, and it's not without artistic merit, but at the same time, that could sort of be a solo over anything. So my personal preference is to really stick to the melody. You can do some variations. Things like that, but if you kind of keep the melody in mind, work on double stops, keeping your right hand moving, things like that, you'll get some really strong solos and really improve your musicianship quickly. But also playing through scales and arpeggios and things like that will help you get some of that kind of further out improvisation under your fingers. Great question. The Pelican 3 says, when you're jamming, what is the key that is used most? Great question. I would say it depends on what kind of music you're playing. If you're playing bluegrass, I would say G, C, D, and A are very common, and that's true in old-time music and fiddle tunes as well. In bluegrass, you'll also run into B flat and B natural. You'll occasionally run into fiddle tunes. I guess in bluegrass, what you run into is you need to sort of play in whatever key is most comfortable for the singer. And for the most part, singers, if they're actually 100% most comfortable in F sharp, they'll probably bump it up to G, just so everyone has an easier time playing along and making good music out of it, because a lot of people are unfamiliar with the key of F sharp. But that said, in like recording situations, people will sing really in whatever key is most comfortable for them and sounds best, and find musicians that won't have trouble playing along in those keys. But I would say, G, D, and A, probably the top three. Then C, then E, B flat, B, things like that. Great questions. Let's see. What Recovering Bassist says, what is your least favorite key to play in? Good question. I would say probably, maybe F sharp or A flat are probably my least favorite. Mostly not on like a tonal perspective. I think they sound great. What was that? That was actually B. But it's a little more muted than G in a nice way, a little less hyped up. But I'm just not, because I play mostly fiddle tunes at this point. I'm really kind of most comfortable in those keys I was just talking about in the Pelicans question. But that said, I've studied jazz in the past and have been in the past more comfortable in B flat and E flat and D flat, and kind of the flat keys that you'll find that are more natural for horn players to play in, that you'll find in the jazz tradition. But yeah, I just kind of off the top of my head, I'd say F sharp or G sharp are keys that just don't quite lay out under my fingers as nicely as I'd like. But with practice, I could get those under my fingers. Chip, thank you very much for the super chat donation. I've seen a couple of these come in, but I'm just kind of trying to catch up with the chat. So I've seen them come in, but haven't said thank you to all of you yet. But I promise I will get to you. Always appreciate the support. Helps me make more lessons and do more live streams, and I love doing them. So always appreciate the support. The Pelican 3 says, when you were playing Sail Away Ladies, in the key of A, you're using a double stop in the E chord. It must have been this one. I love this chord shape. So what it is, yeah, so sail away ladies, sail away ladies, sail away ladies, sail away. When you get down there, your melody is on the 2nd fret of the A string, and I'm using the 6th fret on the D string, a G sharp, as my double stop note. Great, I use that all the time. One of my favorite double stops, especially in the key of A. Chip says, the entry period is open for the Mike Aldridge Instrumental Composition Contest. I've entered 2 of mine. You ever enter? I've never even heard of it. You write some cool tunes. Thank you. Yeah, I haven't heard of it. I'll check it out, though. That would be a fun thing to enter. I've got some tunes that I've written that I like. I'm going to make a note of that and check it out later. Thank you. And other people, if you write tunes, maybe enter this contest. It sounds like a good one. The Recovering Bassist says, the few in-person lessons I took, my teacher had me using my first finger on the first 2 frets, middle on the next 2, ring on the next 2, and pinky on the next 2. Are you the same? Yep. That's the general rule. You know, if you're playing scales, each finger gets 2 frets. So first fret, second fret, you're going to be using your first finger. Third and fourth fret, middle finger. Fifth and sixth, ring. Seventh is your pinky, and then you're up to your next open string. Sometimes you need to stretch your pinky to the 8th, but rarely, at least in my own playing. And I think that's a great rule to start with. That said, you know, once you start getting into double stop playing and playing chords, kind of sometimes you'll have to alter, you know, especially with chords, kind of those rules go out their window, and you just got to do whatever the chord shape requires to play comfortably. And sometimes, you know, I'll sometimes jump up, you know, if I want to play like this double stop, 7th fret on the A string and 3rd fret on the E string. It's kind of like a C double stop shape. Then I'll sometimes jump to using my ring finger on the 3rd fret and, my pointer finger on the 3rd fret and ring finger on the 7th fret. It's just a little more natural it's a little bit of a stretch for me to do 3rd and 7th with my middle and pinky. I could probably practice and get that under my fingers. It might be good for my technique. But sometimes I'll shift a little bit to get the double stop I'm looking for. Cool. Chip says he's been using the slow play along tracks to learn my tunes. That's great. It's kind of an advanced way to learn these tunes because it's a little more sped up, and I'm glad you're taking on that challenge. It's a great thing to do. Keep up the good work. Recovering bassist says definitely struggle with pick direction, especially when going from a high string to a lower one. Yeah, kind of keeping, especially in reels, keeping that down, up, down, up. Sometimes you'll hit down on a high string and up on a lower string, which can feel very unnatural at first, but it keeps your hand in that kind of motor movement of down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And I think is really helpful in sort of getting a nice solid rhythmic sound into your music. Peter Barnett says, any hints for doing chops? Yes, I've got some lessons in the technique and fundamentals section of my website on how to play chop chords. I think, you know, there's part of getting this shape down into your left hand, or even if it's just like a bar shape, you can still chop bar shapes. Any chord that uses all 4 strings, you can use as a chop. And then I love this little exercise in terms of kind of getting your left and right hand synchronized to get that chop sound. What I do, whatever your chord is, let's just use this A shape, 2, 2, 4, 5, A major. You can play it and let it ring, and then just release the pressure in your left hand and the notes stop. You don't need to pick your hand off the strings, you can just let go. So you can note, lock, note, stop, note, stop. And getting a nice clean stopped sound, and then speeding that up. Speed it up until it really becomes a rhythmic sound. And then from there, you know, some people will play chop chords with a fair amount of that note. Some people play almost all rhythm, where it's just kind of a hint of that actual chord sound. That's personal preference. Tall Shenhav, apologies for probably incorrectly pronouncing your name, says, can you go through how to hold the pick? Can't catch it from the videos. So there is a video on right hand technique in the beginner series where I go through it, but the general idea is, you know, shake out your right hand, let it hang down at your side. You're just going to bend from the elbow so your shoulder's nice and relaxed. Try to avoid any of this stuff. You're going to take your hand, it's kind of in a loose fist, like you're maybe like grabbing a door handle, or you can think about this little kind of mouth finger guy. People do as kids. Maybe you still do it. It's a fun thing to do. So you bend from the elbow, you've got that nice loose fist, and you're just going to you're gonna hold the point of the pick in your left hand and put the far side into your hand. It's a little hard to see here. Let me see. So that's sort of what my hand looks like. It's probably a little out of focus. So you got the pick. Let's see if I can get it over the white. So yeah, nice and relaxed. The pick, the point is pointing off to your left hand side. And then your arm still bent just at that 90 degree, just at your elbow. Everything else nice and relaxed. Your arm just kind of flops over the instrument. The instrument's at a little bit of an angle, so it's kind of the left-hand side of the pick goes through the string first and rolls off the strings a little easier. There's a more in-depth description of that in the beginner series on MandoLessons.com. Great question, though. It's always good to revisit that stuff. Recovering Bassist, thank you very much for the Super Chat donation. I very much appreciate it. It's great to have you here every week. So, and you say, Recovering Bassist says, if I play slow, I tend to add more notes, and then I can't do it like that faster. Yeah, that's totally normal. The thing to do is find that place, use a metronome. This is a great use for a metronome. Find that speed where you can play all the notes you want to be playing, and then just bump it up a couple beats at a time, So if you set it at 80 and you're going, getting all those nice notes, but then you go to 100 and you start going, you start tightening up, you're not hitting all those strings anymore, your ornamentation isn't as full. To go back to that 80, and then bump it up to just like 82. Just a little bit faster, and really push yourself gradually through a slightly faster speed. Oh, I just lost a whole bunch of light, but what you gonna do? It should come back. Oh, there it comes. Just gone behind a cloud for a second. Oh, that's a great question. Chip says, in response to Recovering Bassist's question about keeping the strap on the instrument, getting a rubber grommet or washer to put over your strap on the tailpiece so it can't slip off. Oh, I guess that might have been what you were talking about. TAE says, when I play fast, I angle the pick, but that I don't get the loud volume I want. I'd say, once again, same sort of answer to the question just asked from Recovering Bassist. Get the feeling in your right arm and the sound you want out of the instrument, and then work slowly to increase your speed from the sound and feeling you're getting, rather than jumping quickly. Use a metronome, bump it up a little bit at a time. Okay, yep, and Recovering Bassist is saying that the strap is coming off the tailpiece. Yeah, these little, I don't know if they're called like strap savers. I know you can buy things that'll kind of keep the strap on there. Michael says, have you ever changed the frets out on a mandolin? My 2005 mandolin is starting to get little divots in some of the frets. Curious how to tell when it's time to get fret work done. Yeah, I have actually had fret work done on this mandolin. I play with a fairly heavy left hand, probably kind of put more pressure into it than I need to. So I wore through a brand new set of frets in about 2 years. This thing came new from the Ellis mandolin shop in Texas, and I wore through the frets really quickly. A couple of years in, and I had to send it back to Tom to get new frets in. And what you can do sort of before you need full new frets is take it to a well-respected luthier in your area, and they can kind of sand down the level the frets, so that everything plays well. Because once you start getting those divots, you can start having some intonation problems and buzzing and things like that. So there's enough. If the frets were new to begin with, there should be enough height that you can level them a couple times and get them back, and you'll lose a little bit of height on all your frets, but it will ultimately make playing the instrument easier for a little while until you wear through them again, and then you'll need some new frets. And what I would recommend is see if your luthier or whoever's putting your frets in can use either gold EVO frets, which is what is in this mandolin. So I got these frets replaced in about 2011 after playing on 2 years and wearing entirely through a set of frets. And I have not had any fretwork done to this. It's starting to get a little bit of divot in some of the frets. But really it's just kind of polishing up a little bit, tiny little bit of divot in these frets. And that's now been 7 or 8 years that I've had these frets. I've never had them leveled or anything that I can remember anyway. So gold EVO frets are a harder fret that will wear less quickly. You can also see if your luthier will use stainless steel frets, which I have in some guitars, which are actually even harder than gold EVO and will wear even less fast. Some people won't work with stainless steel frets because it's a little harder on tools and people don't want to kind of wreck their tools quicker because sometimes it's hard enough to kind of damage tools. But my luthier said it's not that much of a problem for him, so he's been putting stainless in a lot of my instruments. Man, great questions all over the place. This is a good one. Cool. Anthony says you're my go-to guy to learn tunes. Appreciate it. Robert Hanold, thank you very much for the super chat donation. I appreciate it. Do I know Old Joe Clark? Do I ever? That's a great tune. There's a lesson for it on my website. I will try to play that in a little bit, but I really want to speed through these things and get to speed through all these comments and get to a couple things. But if I can remember, I'll try to get some Old Joe Clark in there at the end. William says, I really enjoy your recordings. Speak about your thoughts on backing up Julia. Yeah, so Julia is a fiddle player that I play with in the band Velocipede. You can find our recordings on the website, MandoLessons.com, under the store tab at the top, or shop, I don't remember what it's called exactly. She plays fiddle, and I play mandolin and tenor guitar in that band. And, I think it's interesting playing just as a duo, because it's just a fiddle player, where she's most of the time just playing melody, and I'm the only accompanying instrument, so I can kind of make a lot of sound. I can kind of make a lot of sound in the accompaniment and not swallow her up, because there's not a bass and another guitar and a banjo and all those other sort of instruments all playing accompanying roles. And I've learned a lot just kind of, playing in that group. But you can also be very minimalist and create a very light sound. While there's a fiddle tune going top. Or you can kind of go through a big range. It's nice playing in a duo because you have a little bit more freedom and you're not as locked into your role as one might be as a mandolin player in a bluegrass band, where you're pretty much just going to be playing that very important kind of chop backbeat. So yeah, play with a bunch of different instruments, start some bands, play in different ensemble sizes, and you'll really kind of get out there and figure out what sounds good in different musical situations. It's a great thing to practice. Any tips on changing strings when playing fast tremolo? Not as fluid as transition as I'd like it to be. I'd say tremolo is an interesting thing because there's so much right hand involved. I think what I do often when I'm changing strings is I use that moment to kind of create a swell. So from the D string, I'll swell up in volume, and then I'll come down a little bit and change strings and swell up on the A string, which just kind of removes a little bit of that string change disparity. So I'm kind of up in volume, then up in volume, and by kind of creating those dynamics, it makes that string change a little less noticeable. Michael, thank you very much for the super chat donation. I appreciate it. Sheldon says you should get a moderator to read questions for you. That way you won't have to look for them and could get more covered in the time you have. That's true. There are ways of setting moderators, and I've thought about doing it. This is actually one of the most question-intensive ones I've done. Usually there's a little more time to play tunes and things, but it's great to have you all here, and I will definitely think about the moderator idea. Doris says, would you consider doing a medium speed play along track? Bit of a stretch to go from slow to real time speed. What I would recommend, and it does require downloading the play along tracks, which you can either do individually or if you sign up as a member on Patreon, you get access to all the play along tracks in one place as downloads. But if you download them, you can use a website like tunetranscriber.com, which can speed up the slow version or slow down the speed up version, or other programs like Amazing Slowdowner or Transcribe or Audacity. It takes me a long time to make those tracks, and ultimately it would be great to have them at a bunch of different speeds, but there's only so much time in the day. So I'd recommend downloading them. I know it does cost a little bit, and I apologize for that. It's mostly to kind of cover the Bandcamp the Bandcamp fees. They don't let me just give them away for free, but either through Patreon or downloading them from Bandcamp and then using a slowdowner to either increase the speed of the slow track or decrease the speed of the fast track, because I know there is a bit of a disparity there, and it's good to be able to get that keyed in right to where you need to be playing with. Michael says, I'd like you to see you play Angeline the Baker. Don't think I've seen it yet on the list of tunes from MandoLessons. It's true. That is not there because it is not a traditional tune. I believe it was written, or I think I had it up at one point, but it got a copyright strike. I think it's an original tune, but then I can't remember. What's that guy's name? I can't remember his name, but some famous American composer, I think, either composed it or YouTube thinks he did. It's a great tune, but yeah, it's a copyright one, unfortunately. Does an accent sign above a note only mean to make it louder, or can it mean double stop also? In general, it's more of kind of like that accent of kind of creating a louder or kind of more intense kind of gives it that kind of varied beat compared to helps define the groove of the tune. I think in general double stops, you could try adding double stops where you see accents, but in general that accent is more of a dynamics indicator than double stop. In general, you'll see double stops notated as two separate notes on the page. Cameron Gaylor says, any recommendations for low-end mandolins such as Luna, Ibanez, Gretsch, etc.? I'm not super familiar with any of those. I've got some information on my website on mandolins at different levels. I've made a video on a $50 versus $500 versus $4,500 mandolin. You can check that out. If you have specific questions about mandolin models you're seeing online, I would recommend going to Mandolin Cafe and asking on the message boards or searching the message board, the forum over there, and seeing what people have to say, because I'm not super familiar with all the mandolin brands. Chip says, have I ever tried Strum Machine? It's great and worth checking out. No financial interest. I have not. I've heard good things about it. I think it's where you can sort of set up your own chord progressions and things like that. But that's definitely something to look into. I haven't done it myself, but maybe I'll look into that. Cool. Henry says, it's been a while since I've seen one of these live streams. Visiting Brunswick this weekend. Am I playing in the area anytime? I'm not. I'm playing weddings. This is kind of the wedding season, and unfortunately, I can't invite you to other people's weddings as much as I'd like. But let me just look at my calendar real quick in case anyone's in Maine. Oh, what is that? Yeah, I think it's shoot me an email. I might have some gig. I might have. If you mean next weekend, there might be a gig that I'm actually playing. But it's I'm a little too disorganized to be able to tell you that right now. But if you shoot me an email, you can find it on the MandoLessons website. I'll get back in touch with you. Clarence says, I'm a new player and find it difficult to get a clear sound from the A and E strings on the first fret because they're so close to the nut. Any suggestions? Part of that could be just kind of finger strength, and part of it could be the instrument setup. If it really seems like there's a lot of space between that first fret and the strings, that can make it hard to push that down. You could bring it to a luthier and have them check it out. Also could be a more in-depth question for Mandolin Cafe forums. All right, I'm almost caught up here, and then we've got a little bit of, wow, you guys have all sorts of questions, and then I hope I can get through all these, but I may not be able to get through all the questions this week, because we still need to play our tune, which I can't remember what it is right now, but I'm going to speed through these last questions. Apologies if I can't get to you this week. Yeah, Pelican says, could I get Julia to come in and play some fiddle at some point? I've thought about having her or other guests in. That would be a lot of fun. Gold EVO is a good fret wire. I need an octave. I've got an octave. Yeah. Chip says, I don't know you have sponsors. I don't really have sponsors. What I've started recently, mostly as a way to better recommend gear, I've signed up with Amazon affiliates. I'm still kind of no ads, but I do get a small commission on if I talk about a piece of equipment. I'm not, sponsored by the company, but if somebody buys that through Amazon, in terms of like mandolin accessories and things like that, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you. I would love, I've got an octave. I've got a couple. I play a lot of tenor guitars, which are octave scale, but they're a lot of fun. Andrew, thank you so much for the super chat donation. Great. Slippity Dave says, I'm new on Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. Loving the lessons. Glad to hear it. I love making them. Angeline the Baker is written by Stephen Foster. Thank you very much, Joan. Mix has been playing for 10 days. Can I do a lesson on Sweet Betsy from Pike? I don't know if that sounds like it might be a recently composed song. I don't know. I'll look into it. If it's a traditional tune, I can try to do it. Are we going to play Waterbound with you? Is that the tune that I said for this week? Okay, Sail Away Ladies for this week. Thank you, Denise. Denise helps me keep everything on track, and I always appreciate it. Sail Away Ladies for this week's jam. Yeah, let's play a little Sail Away Ladies. Apologies if I skipped over your lesson, but I gotta leave in 5 minutes, but it's time to play Sail Away Ladies, which a couple weeks ago I said would be this week's play-along tune in the key of G. It's on my website if you want to look at sheet music or the chords and anything like that. We'll play it through a couple times. I'll start out by playing the melody. Then I'll play some chords so you can play the melody. Then I'll play a little bit, maybe take a kind of solo. You can take a solo if you want. Wherever you're at with the tune, whether it's just playing the chords, that's great. Or if you're ready to jump into some more embellished stuff or taking solos, that's also great. So do whatever you're most comfortable with. So hope you got your mandolin out and tuned. And Sail Away Ladies in the key of G. 1, 2, 3, 4. Go for it. I'll play chords. The melody, you play chords. There's a B part. Take it. A2. B1. B2. Let's both play it together. One more B. Going out. All right. That was a lot of fun. I always love doing those. Let's pick one for next week. There's if you got any requests for tunes that are already on my website, probably not super complicated, so we can get as many people joining in as possible. I love to hear what people are excited about playing and what people want to play next week, or whenever I next do one of these. I think I should be able to do one next week, but I'll let you know later on. But that's about all for me. I'll let some requests roll in and pick something, and then oh, are we losing some frames here? Oh, it looks like it's all right. Let's see. Michael says, what's your criteria for picking new songs? Just what you're feeling at the time. Love to see a lesson on Hunt the Buffalo. That's a great old-time tune. I'll add that one to my list. In terms of my criteria for picking new tunes to teach, I think it's a little combination of kind of whatever I'm excited about, but also I try to do tunes that are fairly common and that other people are going to run into out in the wild, out in public, playing, so we can really get a nice repertoire that is common and not doing too many tunes that are really obscure that no one else will know. It's nice to go out and be able to find people to play with and have a common tune repertoire. So I try to stick to that, but not exclusively. I throw in some original tunes and some more complicated stuff and tunes that'll appeal to more advanced players and intermediate and beginner. Just a nice mix. Cool. All right, we got good questions. Pig's foot. Shove that pig's foot further in the fire. We got 2 requests for that one. That's a great idea. Let's do it. I'll play it once here. It's on my website. It's called Shove That Pig's Foot a Little Further in the Fire. It's a very long name for an old-time tune. It's in the key of G. If I can remember how it goes. Here it is. B part. Great old-time tune in the key of G, fairly well known throughout the world. Let's do that one next week. That'll be a lot of fun. If you don't know it already, lesson is on my website. Again, shove that pig's foot a little further in the fire. If you do know it, maybe work on adding some double stops to your playing or work on taking breaks on it. We'll do the same thing next time I do one of these, which is either next week or the week after. And play it through 5 times or so. Work on getting the chords under your fingers so you can accompany me while I'm playing, and we'll have a lot of fun with it. Once again, thank you all so much for joining in. This was a really fun one. Lots of great questions. Thank you to everyone who supported me with the Super Chat donations. Always appreciate it. Until next time, have a great weekend. Keep playing music. Keep up the good work. And see you next time. If you aren't already, you can subscribe for new lessons every week. Alrighty. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.